Alright guys, we're going to talk a little bit about the order of operation that your brain is going to go through in a high stress type scenario. So basically each one of us has a natural defense, okay? It is what is known as the startle flinch response. For you guys who may be more familiar in the combatives world, you're familiar with a guy named Tony Blauer and his work on what is known as the SPEAR system. Basically, SPEAR is an acronym. It stands for something or other, whatever. Anyway, you can look it up and find out. But the point is that basically what Tony Blauer, just a martial artist from Canada, what he's done is he's built a system around weaponizing the startle flinch response. So the startle flinch response is essentially, it's that body's natural defensive mechanism to push away danger. And we see this a lot, maybe if somebody yells out your name and startles you, or you have maybe a baseball is hit, or you know, something flies out of the corner of your eye or something like that, and your natural defensive mechanism is to just posture up and get your hands between you and that threat. And this is your body's natural designed ability to defend its core. Defend the torso, defend the head, just defend the vital core areas. The thing is that because that natural defense mechanism, which we all have, is happening at a subconscious level, it's happening at near zero time. So you catch something out of the corner of your eye, and before you can even consciously process the thought that says, hey, I better get my hands up to defend my face, it's just you duck your head away and your hands come up. It's happening faster than conscious thought. So this is happening subconscious, and we're going to just say, just for example, that this is happening at near zero time, or we'll just call it maybe 0 to 1. 0 to 1 second. So I don't want you to get caught up so much in the times here as the principle, okay? Because everybody's reaction times are going to be different. So we're just using this just for an example. All right, so the next thing that we have is conditioned response. So conditioned response is also something that is happening at a subconscious level. However, conditioned response is as a result of training. It's as a result of being in a training mode and being in a familiar circumstance, and your brain is now your body has been in that circumstance a number of times, and now your brain is no longer relying on conscious thought to make decisions. Because of the familiarity with the circumstance, your brain is actually responding at a subconscious level. And one of the, kind of a good example that we see of this is in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We used to play a game with each other all the time. We would see each other out on the street, parking lot, grocery store, Walmart, whatever the situation may be. I would see one of my buddies, and I would come up behind him, and I would try to sink my arm in underneath the chin. Now, we would never follow through with the choke, but the idea was that if I could get my arm underneath the chin, then I got that choke and I got him. So we would do that to kind of kick things off and just, have fun. But inevitably, one of the things that you would see is that after a guy had been in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a little while, his brain starts to catch up. Even if he has not necessarily played that game, his brain starts to catch up to the point where he has been in that situation before. When he starts to see in his peripherals things that are coming by, instead of that natural defense mechanism that we have to flinch and startle, what would end up happening is this guy immediately, shoulders come up, hands come to the face, and the chin gets ducked into the chest. And this is as a result of not actually sitting there and practicing that move, but it's just a result of conditioned response, because my brain recognizes that my body has been in this position numerous times before, and it is now reacting on a subconscious level. So conditioned response is very, very much like that natural defense, in that it's happening at a subconscious level, and it also is happening at 0 to 1 second time. It's happening almost instantaneously. Now, depending on what it is that you're doing, the idea has been kind of put out there that complex motor skills cannot be bred into conditioned response. I completely disagree with that. And I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a testament of that. Many of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu's techniques are complex motor skills that are happening at a subconscious level. That means they have become conditioned response. So take that for what it's worth. All right, the next thing that your brain is going to look for when it gets through that natural defensive mechanism, gets through that conditioned response, and it doesn't have any information to fall back on, or it cannot find familiarity in that circumstance, is it's going to resort back to training. Now, we've talked about this a little bit in the past at the comprehension level and the apprehension level. Comprehension is a circumstance, let's say maybe I'm in my place of work and my boss comes in and he says, hey, in the event of a fire, you guys are going to exit this room, down the hall, out the building to the left. Okay. Once a month he comes in and he says that, or maybe twice a year he comes in and he just makes sure, he briefs the room and he says, hey, this is what we're going to do in the event of a fire. What ends up happening is I comprehend the instructions. I have not physically walked through that path yet. I have not developed the point of muscle memory or anything like this. I have just merely intellectually made those connections that in the event of a fire, I go this way. And this is training at a comprehension level. For some of you guys maybe in the business world, we also call this table talks, or you guys who ever do any kind of anti-terrorism type stuff. If you ever have active shooter training and stuff, a lot of active shooter training is only done at a comprehension level. It's bringing people in and having table talk discussions with them and briefing them on what's going to happen. But oftentimes they don't take it into the next level of force on force, just because you're dealing with regular everyday business people. You're not dealing with SWAT ninjas. So a lot of training is done at a comprehension level, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. The difference is that with a comprehension level, your reaction time is going to be 2 to 3 seconds. Because what's happening is your brain is going to look for a natural defense, it's going to look for a conditioned response at a subconscious level, then it's going to look for something that you've apprehended, and we'll talk about that in a second. When it can't find anything there, it's going to go to comprehension. So that is all happening very quickly, but it is taking a few seconds for you to decide and for you to actually recognize the familiarity in the circumstance, and you make a decision and go and do what you need to do. All right, the next level of training that we have is apprehension. All right, apprehension would be the same type of scenario. I'm in a situation where my boss comes in and he says, hey, in the event of a fire, you're going to go out, down the hall, out the left there, down the hall, or out of the building. So I have that. I'm at comprehension level. Then he comes in and once a week or once a month or whatever the circumstance calls for, we actually execute a fire drill where everybody hears the alarm, they make that mental connection from the alarm, that means fire, so now I get up, I walk out, I go out the hall, outside the building, and now I've actually walked the path. And now what I'm doing is I'm doing this multiple times. For you guys in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, another example of this would be your instructor is sitting on the mat and he's demonstrating to you on how to perform an armbar. So you're sitting there and you're watching him, you're sitting on the wall, you're watching him perform the armbar, and you're like, yep, I understand, got that. Okay, comprehension. Then he tells you, break up in the room and go and practice the position with other guys. Now, nobody is executing any kind of resistance. We're not putting any stress in this environment yet. We're just using willing partners. We're not using a real fire. We're just using willing partners, and we're going through and we're doing the scenario. We're making sure that our body is starting to develop familiarity with that circumstance. This brings us up to an apprehension level. Apprehension is going to be that 1 to 2 second response time. Okay? So one of the things that you're going to see is that natural defense, 0 to 1 second, conditioned response, I'm going to argue that it's actually the same speed as natural defense, but it has to be trained, whereas natural defense, startle, flinch, is something that your body just inherently has. So conditioned response, you can get it to the same speed as this, 0 to 1 second. Apprehension, 1 to 2 seconds. Comprehension, 2 to 3 seconds. So, knowing that your brain is going to default along this path, the next thing that it's going to run into is it's going to run into panic. Now, we have to understand that what panic is. Panic is the absence of all of this. It's the absence of any sort of training. So panic is essentially bankruptcy of data. All right? My brain is now finding my body in a situation that it has zero familiarity. It has no idea what the hell is going on. And the result of that is a panic type response. It's adrenaline being dumped. It's that fight or flight mechanism kicking in, increased breathing, increased heart rate, sick to your stomach, sweating profusely, things like this. I mean, there's all sorts of different biological things that are happening. I don't really want to get into that. But what I do want to get into is I want to get into the reason why we're going into panic. And the reason why we're going into panic is because we do not have any other information for our brain to default to. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about this like a path, all right? When I get here and I run into a situation where I'm in a stressful environment, I get to this natural defense. Everybody is going to have that. So hands go up, startle, flinch, no problem. But now I'm finding myself in a situation where, let's say it's my first day grappling. I'm on the mat, I have no idea what's going on. And this guy is just mauling me. Okay, I don't have any conditioned responses. Nothing that's going to actually work in that type of environment other than just normal bodily panic type response like trying to push away danger. Okay, one of the things that I want you to kind of pick up on, and one of the things that I talked about in the last video that we did about the armbar, is the fact that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is specifically designed to capitalize on those natural defensive mechanisms. All right? And I want you to catch that point, because there's a lot of people out there who are like, oh, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is nothing but Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, it's nothing but this, it's nothing but that. No, you're missing the whole point, and it only shows your level of ignorance on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Yes, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu utilizes a lot of the same joint locks and techniques, okay? None of these things are new. Somebody looked at the arm one day and said, hey, it bends this way. I'd probably piss that guy off if I bent it the other way. Let me try that. Okay, we're not talking really rocket science here. The thing that sets Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu apart is the level of technique that goes in, but also it's the mindset and the strategy that goes in. It's capitalizing on that natural defense mechanism, that startle flinch. So one of the things that you saw when we looked at that last armbar video was you saw a girl that was on top and she is just laying blows down on this other girl, just tagging her. And I want you to see the very first punch, the immediate response of the girl on the bottom, which led me to the conclusion that she has zero training. Her brain went into full panic mode because she had nothing else to fall back on, is her hands just naturally went here. This allowed the girl to get the arm lock, the first arm lock before setting up the choke. So the next thing I want to talk about is the choke. So she's in a situation, she's got the girl, she's trying to bend her over, and she's punching her and stuff, and the girl's natural defensive mechanism, because the girl had sort of kind of taken her side and she wasn't able to protect her face anymore, her natural defensive mechanism was to turn her back to the threat, to protect her vital areas. This is a natural condition, or this is a natural defense mechanism. This is all part of that startle flinch that we have. So what happened is as she turns her back, the other girl also conditioned response, because she has been trained to a level where she recognizes this individual has now given me her back without even processing a conscious thought. I want you to see how quickly that happened in that video. Bam, sinks a choke in, drops back, gets her hooks in, chokes the individual unconscious. Now, this is all happening in this range. The techniques that were being used on the girl on the bottom were being used because the first girl had been trained to a level, at least on certain techniques, had been trained to a level of conditioned response where she was no longer having to actually think and process, hey, let me think about this. How do I do the arm bar? Do I grab it here? Do I do this? She's not even thinking about that. And if you watch her technique, it's a little rough and stuff like that. She probably wasn't any more than a high-level white belt, maybe a blue belt tops. But she was able to actually get in there and capitalize on those things. Why? Because her body, or her mind rather, had familiarity with the circumstance. The other girl on the other stance, because she had no familiarity with being on the ground, she had no training at a comprehension level, she had no training at an apprehension level, and therefore she had no conditioned response. So what ends up happening is her body goes from natural defense mechanism straight to panic. And it bypasses all of these. That's why I say panic is a bankruptcy of data. When your mind is searching for information and it finds nothing in the subconscious, then it searches for the conscious and it finds nothing. At that point, it's going to resort to panic. So, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of this because we're going to be studying some of the physiology that's going on. We're going to study kind of how your mind works and basically ways to capitalize on things. So, you guys think about that. Train hard.